welcome to a very worried start of a Velocity Kinetics video. I smell a lot of petrol. You've just seen me scouring through the owner's manual. Because the engine briefly was running a little lumpy, and it had a orange warning light saying ACC on the dashboard. But I've never seen that before. We'll go that way, I think. Test it up a hill, because if it's fuel flow, this is very different to what I had planned to talk about. Orange ACC warning light. I don't know what that means. Come on, shift. I had felt this running a little lumpy the other day, but it sounded fine. It didn't stop making boost. We were able to go where we needed to go. The car drove as it anticipated. This is bizarre. Bizarre. This car's meant to be going for its MOT on Friday, and to check the tyre pressure warning thing again. Oh, this. I haven't got round yet to filming a year with the Honda, but suffice it to say, it's not been a good year. And most annoyingly, after they replaced the cracked windscreen, whatever auto glass cover the windscreen in, or what the windscreen comes covered in, I cannot get rid of it. I've used wet e-cloths, dry static cloths, high pressure, low pressure, as in pressing firmly and pressing quite gently. Nothing seems to clean it. Just do a little blow off though. Maybe it just needs a decent run. It doesn't do an awful lot of mileage like it used to. Well, not like it used to, as in I just in general don't do as many miles as I did. So what I was wanting to talk about today were two things: the proposed changes to UK car tax, and a recent experience I've had at Volvo. Not a bad experience, well, not bad as in not bad customer service or anything like that, it's not a complaint. It's more of a quandary, I suppose. So, there's a lot of, as far as I'm aware of, I'm not as in touch with politics as I'd kind of like to be, but at the same time it's so depressing at times. It's just, perhaps it's better for your own mental health just to stay a little politics adjacent, maybe. I feel like there should have been another 30 mile an hour sign by now. But there's proposals to bring in yet again, and it won't be the first time I've talked about this on the channel. I don't remember when I last discussed it, but it will have been other times it's been proposed. They want to bring in pay per mile, and my banging on the steering wheel is not because I wholly disagree with pay per mile, because in some ways it's a far fairer system. But then again, if you can't move closer to your job, for example, you're being penalised just to go to work, which is wholly unfair. Or if you or if you've got family scattered around and you're a carer and things that's going to potentially impact some people on lower incomes who haven't got much of a choice in the matter. However, it is currently proposed to be just for electric vehicles. It's apparently 3p per mile that they want to do this. However, there is a giant black hole in the how are you going to implement it? Because effectively it means either people having to be honest on their mileage descriptions, or you've got to get everyone with an electric vehicle to agree to have a black box put in, or at the point of the car being serviced, you're relying on I'm just going to say the mechanic, because, well, anyone can service it really, can't they? You could take it to anywhere to get it serviced, for the most part. But it's reliant on the place doing the servicing, reporting the mileage back correctly through whatever channels are then put into place to exist for it, and then in turn being able to pay the correct amount of money. Some people have been given incredible breaks on electric cars, as in financial incentives. Come on. Okay, so you're still picking up. So, you know, for some people it just made pure financial sense. Some people who are just made of money and would have been in the Audi A6s, your BMW 5 Series and Mercedes E-Classes, have gone over to things like your Teslas, your Polestars, and so on. And that's all fine, because you know, people are free to change what car they drive. And for a long time, EVs did get, in my opinion, quite an unfair tax break. A lot of people who drove them typically were the sort of people who could afford a bit more tax. Let's be brutally honest, with the expense of an electric vehicle, most of the people being able to drive them were the sort of people who could afford a little bit more tax. But I'm also not in favour of being all black boxed and things. On the one hand, yeah, a fantastic safety idea, etc., and there are genuine merits to black boxing every vehicle that comes out. Better insurance prices, fairer insurance prices that reflect how you drive. But in turn, crap, it's Remembrance Sunday. Forgot about that. But in turn, it creates more opportunity for more fraud. And one thing a lot of people believe may happen, and it was in what was the place I was reading? This Is Money. I think it was the newspaper article or online journal article I was reading, suggests that we might start to see an increase in clocking fraud or rollback fraud, i.e. cars being reported with completely different mileages to what they've actually done. And that is a very genuine concern and a legitimate concern. I've been the victim of fraud myself before, as has probably just about everyone someone knows. Even if it was an attempt at fraud, just about everyone knows someone who's had fraud attempted on their account in some capacity. So then in turn, if they can't get on top of that and find a way to plug that loophole, you've then potentially got ways for people to then start selling cars with more money and things. It means that manufacturers will need to then start finding ways to block in and lock in their operating systems on their vehicles, which then may make over-the-air updates a bit more difficult, which then may make it harder just to use any garage to get your car serviced at. the part of the article what I couldn't wrap my head around, as in it's wholly unfair, the logic behind charging EV drivers the 3p per mile tax is that petrol and diesel vehicle owners are paying fuel duty tax. So all we're doing is levelling the playing field. And an electric car, in theory, I believe the numbers it said were over a 10,000 mile per year coverage based on current fuel prices. It would still make driving an electric car about £1,000 a year cheaper. Which, I mean, especially at how the rate things are going up in price, less is less, cheaper is cheaper. All is in theory good when it costs less. In theory. So I've got no idea why this was running lumpy. I'm gonna have to add this to the ticket with John Banks, so you can see what was going on with it. And yeah, less is less, fairer is fairer. It's not the end of the world. However, arguably, we already pay a lot of money just for petrol and diesel cars. If you think about it, what the 3p per mile tax won't address is the fact that we are, to quote a James May rant that I quite like, and I know I've used more than once on this channel, when you buy some petrol, in the whole thing about VAT, you pay fuel duty tax and value added tax on the fuel duty tax, which is technically true because you're being taxed twice when you're buying petrol. So either electricity prices have got to go up a bit to compensate, / you're only going to be they're going to have to do something that makes it so that you can only charge it by the 3-pin plug rather than a special charger at home. Jeez, I can still feel like I'm smelling petrol. Those car dumping loads of fumes. That would probably explain at least that point. The problem is, I'm also not fond of the idea of restricting what people can do. I'm quite left-leaning in my political thinking, and I'd like to think quite liberal in my ideology. So why can't people just do what they want and pay for what they want? But at the same time, EV owners have had it easy compared to petrol and diesel drivers. I'd own electric if I could. I just can't afford one. And even if I could afford one, I know a neighbour of mine, because we're in shared ownership properties where a housing association owns part of it. A neighbour of mine, they've had such a palaver with the housing association getting permission to put a charger on their property. Now, it wasn't all they were doing was, rather than running the risk of the housing association being like, what the hell is that, take that off, they were open up front about it. It's like, can I put that on, does that need permission? And in the end, basically the housing association are dithering, because it's infuriating. It's like, it's our house, but it's, when we need to do things, it's suddenly my problem. And that, I will never wrap my head around that on a shared ownership, because that is true how it works. Sort of, how has it gone from being our house to my problem? So in the end, they've just done it. They've just gone, oh fuck this! I cannot keep waiting for you to make your mind up. It's inconvenient going to the local Sainsbury's or BP to charge up every time I need to charge up. So they've just done it. And based on their experience, it's like, even if I could buy an electric car I'd like tomorrow, which probably would be a Polestar 2, although I did quite like the look of a BMW i5 I saw in the Asda car park the other week. And I'd like the look of a lot of Audi's electric offerings actually. But anyway, even if I could afford one, I'm not going through that faff on, and then you've got to buy / lease your charging point and install it, then remove it. And I know I haven't got electrics that side of the house. They'd have to bleed off the back of a 3-pin plug, I think, which I don't know where they are. down there, as in I'm not sure where the wiring is. It's something that should be quite easy is suddenly becoming quite a thing, shall we say. So, the bit about it that no one can really quite answer is where people stand on hybrid vehicles, because they're proposing bringing in a smaller tax in the similar manner, but it's not as fully thought out as the electric one, which even then it's not still fully flushed out. But on about doing it for petrol electric hybrids, like my Swace. And you know, I bought that because that was what I could buy. It wasn't ultimately, yes, I didn't have to buy the vehicle. I could have said no to it and what have you. But that was also all I could afford, what I could afford. And also, I know hybrids don't save the planet quite as much as they could, but I also do like the fact I can do a lot of driving around town, and not put out any fumes and make the air quality worse and what have you. I do like the fact that I can do all that in the Swace. I shouldn't be penalised for it, and I'm already paying the fuel duty tax. I'm already paying the fuel duty tax that they're claiming that electric car owners would now be paying if they did that to sort of balance the books, even up the burden, which isn't right. It's like, then I'm hoping it's just someone has latched onto a thought that someone said maybe we could do it for that, and it's been badly reported. I'm hanging on to that, because also if that is how it becomes, and I can't afford to, because if you've got that, using the Swace as an example, I apologise, I'm struggling to get my words out, but it's sort of how confused / annoyed at the concept I am. I bought the car, I paid VAT on the car when I bought it, value added tax for people who don't live in the UK. I then had to buy some road fund licence tax. Granted, Suzuki gave me the first year, they paid for it for the first year, but still, they paid for it, and then I've picked it up every year ever since, and that's gone up. I have paid my value added tax and my fuel duty tax on my petrol, which has gone up. So I've paid already a lot of tax there. I've then paid insurance premium tax on my car insurance premiums, and then I believe 1 year, I'm pretty bloody sure in the breakdown it said VAT. I'm pretty sure it said I was paying VAT. Oh, for God's sake. Damn microphone. Sorry, I'm using a different microphone to what I do normally. I can't find the normal clip for it, so it's not staying. But I'm sure I also paid value-added tax on my car insurance premium, which is like, hang on, value-added tax is meant to be for luxury items. Car insurance is not a luxury. I can't drive around without it. So yeah, that's been an interesting thing. And then, like I say, they now want to potentially add an additional pay-per-mile tax on top of all of that. It's like, where does it stop? Where does it stop? And I appreciate, yes, I'm potentially getting my blood pressure up and getting myself in a tiz over something that hasn't happened and may not happen. But it's still a case of like, oh, what was the fucking point of me buying the hybrid? What was the point? Seriously. So yeah, it's a proposal, and even then it won't come in for another 2 or 3 years on the electric car stuff. So your electric car owners will still benefit a little bit longer than everyone else on the car tax front. Although, in fairness, electric car owners have lost the no road tax, and I personally feel that was always a mistake, because electric vehicles typically are a lot heavier than their petrol and diesel counterparts, because of the battery, or at least to have a decent battery capacity, they're going to be heavier. So they're putting just as much, if not more, wear on the roads, plus all the extra torque and things they produce. It's mental. What I think we should do, and this is where the mentioning of torque comes in, I would like to see a model done on car tax if it was done by power. I'd even be interested if someone could model it in such a way so it was power, if there was some sort of formula that's like power times weight divided by whatever, you know, so something a bit more scientific than power, if we go full Clarkson with it. And if we look at it purely just from a horsepower perspective, a power perspective, both of my cars put out, rounded up, because I think there's 1 or 2 PS in it, so it's not a big roundup. They're about 125 PS, which is more than enough for what most people need. You could easily argue that actually probably 80 to 100 is what most people need for most daily use. If you need more power, it's because you've either got a sports car slash supercar, so it needs the power to build the speed and maintain the speed, or you're towing something, so you need the torque. But if you're driving around in your things like that, BMW i4 that's just gone by, or if you're driving around in your Tesla, you don't need, where their petrol and diesel conventional counterparts probably would have had 180 to 200 horsepower. You don't need 400, 500, 600 horsepower to just bomb around in. It's handy to get the lump of a machine up and running, especially if it's a big thing like a big Tesla with a huge battery pack, or some of the bigger and heavier things like the is it the iX8 I saw the other day. It was an absolute tank of a vehicle. Quite literally put a turret on it and it would be a tank. Shut up. To me mum and dad up here, might do, that depends on whether they've been here today. I think they were meant to be, but they might have gone to see my brother. Nope, there they are. Oh no, wait, that's a Jag, never mind. Could have been the spit of my dad with the shape of those glasses. Not that it's a criticism on my dad's glasses, just sort of a holy crap. Talk about a doppelganger. If they've been here, they've been and gone. So I'm just driving through Wesley at the moment. But I reckon something like going down the power route would be fairer. And then if you factor weight in, British roads are not built for the weight of all these electric cars. They're not even really built for the weight of conventional petrol and diesel cars. As things have gotten heavier, with the more luxuries people expect, the better build quality, and just in general cars getting bigger, full stop. So I think a review of the vehicle tax system, absolutely, but rather than pay per mile, almost pay per kilogram or pay per horsepower. That is what I think would be a better system to do. granted, then you'll have people go, yes, but I've got a sport mode, and in sport mode I get the full, like if you think about the old is it the E60 M5, that the M button, I think it was, where you were driving around about 400 horsepower with it turned off and then 500 with it on. That does create some problems, but I suppose we're talking about peak horsepower that could be available on tap. And then when people start modifying cars, see what happens from there. So I'm just trying to, I'm not sure where I want to go at the moment, but I am just trying to flush out whatever gremlin this is. Right. So that's, we'll park that point there on the tax system. It's more of a vent and a rant more than anything concrete. But I hope people try and understand the point I'm trying to make. The theory is kind of right about what they want to do, but I'm not convinced it's the right way to go about it. So now on to the next bit, which is my recent Volvo experience. Now, my dad's recently got rid of his Kia. He went to a Volvo. It sounds like the electric shorted out once in the Kia and he couldn't get the car to fire, and it was on railway tracks. I still don't understand how it happened. He's been a bit vague about the details, but when he went to Kia to get it looked at, he received some absolutely awful customer service. The guy thought that, but it sounds like he was a traditional slimy car salesman, as in not really listening to what Dad had gone in for, trying to sell him something, thinking a sale was a given, and that was it. And my dad then went back to Volvo. Plus, my mum had difficulty with the touchscreen, which actually makes me think the difficulty she described. It sounds like that was wrong out the factory. But he's gone back to Volvo. He's got an XC40, and apparently, the man who sold me Dad a lot of his Volvos of the S is still there. Because what was Sessenlater Volvo is now. Sessenlater is no longer a chain in Bury St Edmunds anymore. The owners, I think they've either sold up, retired, something like that, or died. Maybe they've died, I can't remember. But it's now part of Marshall's group. And it's back to being Volvo. Oh, have I just enjoyed VTEC too much? And it's over-revved itself. Drop it into that and we'll see what we get. I've been driving around out of sport mode a lot recently, because I do sometimes don't like the fact that this will shift up at 5,000 RPM in sport manual mode. I do sometimes want the extra little bit of puff, the extra 500, 600 RPM I get without it. As in, sometimes it's better. It's like, no, I don't want to shift now because I know I'm going to drop the torque if we shift now. Sort of situation. I'm just going to head towards my aunt's house and bomb it down the road there and see what's what. Bomb it up and down. I believe they are still doing roadworks here. Even when we came the other day. Paddles are still responding quick, so what the hell happened? Now, the reason I went to Volvo is Sarah and I have been talking. She's looking at potentially a new. We're hoping that there's a secondment she's gone for. She's been on this secondment multiple times, and a lot of people in very high places within the organisation have said that she should just be in that job full time. So we're hoping that after this time, someone turns around and goes, just give that job to Sarah permanently. Put her in that grade, because she clearly does it very well. Which might mean we can tidy up some finances sooner. Might mean we can look at replacing one of the cars for what we would like. Well, it's wrong to say what we would like, because we like both like what we've got, but more as in sort of less of a compromise. More of a what do we want? And she really would want, while she quite likes Land Rover Discovery Sport and the Q5, which I do both quite like as well, she would actually really like a Volvo XC60. Not my cup of tea, but it was also a case of like, how stubborn am I being, but also a case of we've said we would replace whichever car makes the most financial sense at any given point, should it be required. So, for instance, if the Swace was about to make us bankrupt for needing a battery replacement, for example, then that would go when we're looking at something. Or if this car suddenly decides it's about to shit itself, right, then this goes, sort of a situation. I.e., cold logic behind the situation, behind the thought. Nothing more than that. Now, I do like a Volvo, I do love an S60, I do love the V60. The S90 and V90, I know they've just gone off sale again. Like them less so. The XC40, I don't really like it that much. And when we were looking around, I actually very nearly went for I think it was still under Sesson Lata at the time. But the Volvo dealership that I went to, they had a V40 D4 in at that point. For 9,000, it had about 40,000 miles on the clock. And I did seriously toy with getting that. Because it was cheaper than this. But I would have then been in a situation where I would have had a big 2-litre diesel car sat doing not an awful lot most of the time. And I didn't want to do that because I know some cars like that really get unhappy. And ultimately this, with its power boost engine, was the better, probably for us, that it's turned out to be the better choice. Going on with this car at the moment, but I went and had a look, and I was in the showroom for quite a while. I also did want to put the wind up the dealer that sold me dad the car, because apparently they used to fear me when I used to go in with me dad, not because me dad was rude or anything like that, or I was rude, but because me dad bought Volvo after Volvo after Volvo. There was nearly always a brochure of some sort, even if it was an old one. There was always a brochure lying around at home, so I would just read and reread and reread the brochures cover to cover, so I knew the line and the models and the prices and their option configurations better than the salesman did. It still feels fine, so maybe it was just... maybe because I didn't... What are you doing? Why didn't pull... Maybe this is just not run hot enough for long enough. Maybe I've done too many short journeys in this. Anyway, I was looking around. I was in the dealership for quite a long time. I did really like the V60. It is noticeably higher off the floor, at least in the seat. That is, it is noticeably higher off the floor than the Swace, and definitely this. The seats were lovely. They still got that same Volvo smell. What I couldn't understand when I was looking, they had a V90, an XC40, an XC60 and a V60 all in the showroom. They were all sat on completely different tyres. The XC60 was on Pirellis, the XC40 was on Continentals, the V60 was on Bridgestones, and the V90 was on Falcons. Not a criticism as such. It's just sort of a, I don't understand it. And the XC60 they had in the showroom on its Pirellis on the rears, it was 10,000 miles. The Pirellis felt like they didn't have much more left to give, maybe 5,000 at best. So, what I didn't like about the XC60 when I sat in it, actually I should clarify as well, the other part about, before I wandered off topic, stop wandering off topic again, Chris, the other bit that I wanted to check is, as I mentioned, we'd get rid of whatever car made the most financial sense at the time, would make the most financial sense at the point of needing to commit if we were replacing car. But also it's a case of, I like the boot space on the Swace. It's big, it's flat, I know I can get a lot of stuff in it. So I wanted to make sure that we weren't committed to keeping one car over the other, so it sort of goes both ways. Must I keep the Swace? Must I keep the Honda? Sort of situation. I probably, if I had the money to, I think this would go, and then the Swace would stay. But more because of how few miles I cover, for the most part, it just makes a bit more sense for me to have a hybrid and things. The boot space in the XC60 was far bigger than I thought it was going to be. The boot space in the XC40 was bigger as well, so actually, if we were in a financial position to do so, we could. The V60 was very nice. What I did like about the Volvos, and I miss it about the Swace, as you can see I often hold my paddles, even when the car's in automatic on its own, I do really enjoy having my paddles. It's something, I need something back here. The Volvos didn't have any sort of override on their gearbox. Are you gonna move over and let me out? Well, you could have done, but you chose not to. They don't have a paddle override on their gearbox, but the steering wheel's a bit chunkier, so I don't think I'd miss my paddles. I'd have to drive one to know how much I like it, but what I didn't like when I was sat in the driver's seat of the XC60, I hadn't quite got it into my position where I'd like it to be. I really didn't like the way the front end just dropped away, and the same in the XC40. Now, some of it might be, well, you don't like your SUVs. It's not a dislike of the SUVs on that perspective. I just think they're a useless class of vehicle for the most part. XC60 is lovely. What's wrong with the V60? You know. So my Volvo quandary is the cars that were available were very nice, and I would happily have them. It's just sort of a, do I really want an XC60? The other thing, I suppose, is I've loved Volvos for as long as I can remember. I think they're a fantastic brand. People do accuse Volvos of not being the most engaging to drive. But apart from maybe the 340, so you're going back donkey's years, they haven't made a bad car, whereas quite a lot of other manufacturers have made bad cars. The Volvos have always made fairly handsome, very practical, very safe, and when they used to have the 5 cylinders in, amazing sounding engines. This is a 40 mile. Sorry, this bit of the road I'm going on in Bury, it's a 50 mile an hour, this tiny stretch, like really you can't get up to 50. But the roundabout before it that we've just gone round, you can easily do it at about 40 miles an hour. 30 to 40 is what you would do it at. Anything less and you're starting to go a bit slow. This Peugeot up ahead of me has just come off it at 25 and made no efforts to speed up. But yeah, my Volvo quandary is not necessarily, oh, do I want an XC60 or a V60 or what have you, because that will come down to what's available, what can I afford, what loan can I get, what am I offered for my car, how much is it going to cost me to insure and tax. Unlike when I looked at the Audi, I felt nothing. Nothing. Now, whether it's because I've used up all my love for the brand over the years, so it's just a next logical step, could be. Could it be when I was looking at the A4 and the Q5, it was suddenly something exciting that I'd always thought would be out of my price range, suddenly in it, and driving them and seeing how much more equipment they had on them as standard than what my Swace had, and potentially looking at buying one. Was it potentially buying a new car side of things that was exciting? Maybe. It's entirely possible, not illogical. Or was it something else entirely? But I couldn't, or is the other problem, was I just looking at it too logically? Which could also be the problem. But I can't ignore the fact that you'd have thought if I loved the brand that much and tried to get a press car from them last year, or was it this year? Well, I tried to get a press car from them at some point. You'd think I'd be happier. You'd think I'd be more excited to go looking at Volvos and things. And I wasn't. And I don't know why. Because I'd still love a Volvo. I'd love an original 99 2000 S40 T4. The turbo, I think it had 200 horsepower at the time, or 190, something like that. I'd love an S70R, an original V70R, I'd like an 850R, I'd like the newer V70 and S60Rs. I'd like just a standard S60 or V70 2-litre turbo, if nothing else just on the V70 front, because they were that much more uncommon than their similar engined S60 counterparts. So I'm now in Asda, because this video is going to end as is custom on these Velocity Kinetics video, where I'm going to go get my lunch. I nearly pulled the trigger on a couple of S40s before I bought this, and we were about to pull the trigger on an S60, but the guy had sold it minutes before my inquiry on Auto Trader got to him. So yeah, it's like I say, I'm hoping I was just too clinical, too logical for my own good. Or was it also the simple fact that Sarah was there, visibly excited by it all, and in turn was I feeding off her excitement when we were at Audi? Could have been that. It's entirely possible. Come on. That was me leaving it in neutral. Because I've been driving it in drive recently, I've gotten used to 2 notches back. Cool, an old shaped Vitara. I do like those chunky shaped Vitaras. You couldn't have waited, woman in the Audi, you couldn't have waited 30 seconds for me to finish parking, could you? Maybe I was feeding off her excitement at that point. I don't know. But we'll see what happens in the future. I hope we can eventually afford to be able to get something we both really want. I will say the XC60 was not quite as much of an no as I thought it was going to be. Still not my favourite. Still not something I would like if I was running to the Volvo dealership with my money. Still know what I would pick up at all. But, yeah. Very confusing. Very confused. Like I said, I thought I'd be excited for it. I thought I'd be buzzing. Also, there is a blessing in disguise in that. The fact I haven't come back buzzing hasn't mean I've been able to make another financial cock-up and work out to afford one, because I just flatly can't. That's just not an option. So, there we are. Oh, and just something on the personal side of things. We've got another cat since the last time I did one of these, I think. Toby the Tabby. So you might see a little tabby boy running around in some of these videos. Him and Izzy are not always getting on as well as I'd hoped. Not always it's not always fisticuffs, but happens more often than I care for. But he's very adorable and very driven by his stomach. Seriously, I've not come across a food that he doesn't try to steal. So, there we are. Anyway, I'm off to get some lunch. Don't know when the next one of these will be out. I'm working on the next part of the Everyman video. Actually thinking about that, I've noticed I don't do these videos for the views. Far from it. I do it because it's nice to vent. It's a good way to talk, and if it makes views, it makes views. Even though most of my videos are only in double digits, maybe 40, 50 views on average for the year, they've suddenly dropped off. And a lot of other people have commented as well in their own videos. LMM, Laurie's Mechanical Marvels, he's mentioned that his videos have just dropped off in viewership. And I'd have to agree. And not because he's dropped the quality. They're just... I don't watch as much of his content as I'd like. But it doesn't seem to be... Something's happening, and I don't know what it is. Maybe the YouTube bubble's about to burst. Maybe it's going to come back in my favour and it's back to amateurs rather than full-blown borderline production companies running it. Who knows? Anyway, drive safe, look after yourselves. I'll see you next time.